We're about to take it back.
Okay. Yes, guys, and we are back with another very special episode. And as you guys can see, we got a very special guest with us today. For all you DWC growers, you probably know who we have on right now. It's the inventor of the Hydro Bucket, the grower of some amazing plants, and the man who can grow, bro. So we have on Mitchell. How's it going, man? Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. My pleasure. Now we'll get into the Hydro Bucket shortly because, like, I know that's like your baby, man. It's a really awesome invention. Like I've seen, it's from the beginning when you started it all off, and I've seen like recently it's been patented in the USA, Canada, and Europe. So like, congratulations, dude. That's a big move. And I definitely want to get into the Hydro Bucket. But before we do, like, can you tell me a little bit about your name, I Can Grow Bro, and the Hydro Bucket? How did those names like come about? That's just something I ask everyone who comes onto the show.
Oh yeah, I Can Grow Bro. It was I wasn't even on IG, and it was just a friend of mine when I first started this process going down, looking at the Hydro Bucket and maybe getting it going. And she said, "Why don't you get on IG?" I said, "Sure." So I searched I Can Grow Bro, and I couldn't believe that it wasn't taken. So I was like, "Okay, that's me for sure."
Copped.
And yeah, and then Hydro Bucket. It was my partner that came up with that name. We were thinking, well, what are we going to call the Hydro Bucket? And he got that one, and I think it's a great name. So
Yeah, definitely is, man. And both of those names are super catchy, man. Like I think I was following I Can Grow Bro before I was following the Hydro Bucket account, just to show you how catchy it really is. So I
right
like
on.
it a lot, man. But how did you get into growing? Because I noticed you grow a lot of different plants. So what sort of different plants do you grow?
Yeah, I grew up. I was lucky enough to just have parents that always had a garden, so I've always been exposed to plants and growing, and just naturally had a green thumb, I think, because of that. And it was coming up to legalization in Canada, when it was announced a couple of years before legalization happened. Growing cannabis was always a dream of mine. I grew all kinds of everything else, including, you know, uh, went down the mycology route, and grew a lot of
Oh,
different
nice.
types of mushrooms. And then cannabis was announced. I thought, well, that's a dream come true. I can't wait. So I bought the Grow Bible, and I started just choosing how I wanted to grow. I wasn't sure how I wanted to grow. I just knew I wanted to grow. And for me, deep water culture was the thing. It was for me to grow in my house, down in my basement. I was a stay-at-home dad with three young children. 2, 5, and 6, and or sorry, 2, 4, and 6. And yeah, hydro. It was nice and clean. It just made sense for me. So I started growing peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, big totes full of
Ooh,
herbs and
nice.
leafy greens, everything I could think of in this little closet downstairs. And then when it came time to grow cannabis and it was legal, then I just simply started growing cannabis, and it was a piece of cake.
Awesome, man. That's really amazing. So, like, DWC is not something that a lot of beginners generally go toward, right? So, like, a lot of people think it's very difficult. They are really just scared of it because it can go south really quickly if things are off, right? But you get some
Right.
amazing results. Like, the results are literally unparalleled sometimes. So, what really made you get into DWC first, as opposed to like starting off in soil, maybe going organic or bottle nutrients?
Yeah. DWC was appealing because of the cleanliness factor, number one, that I
Okay.
wouldn't have to haul anything downstairs through my TV room to the closet that I was growing in the corner of the basement.
Things can
I'm like,
get dirty.
yeah, I didn't want to do that, right? I have house plants all over the house, and I know what it's like to be topping up soil and doing all that
Yeah.
stuff. And I thought that's not what I want to do with a crop in the house. So hydroponics right away stood out for that reason, and that was probably the main reason.
Awesome,
Yeah.
man. That's actually something that I've heard a lot of people who grow in DWC say, because I've actually had another guest on and they said the same thing. Just the cleanliness, they loved that. So, I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it makes a lot of sense when you think of it that way. But what would you say to a beginner who wants to get into growing in DWC but is a little bit hesitant to do so? What would you say to them?
I would say it's easier than you think. It's way easier than you think. There's a lot less interpretation that happens with deep water culture, and that's why I think it's perfect for new growers. If you can just follow a recipe, then you should be able to crush deep water culture. Unlike soil, where you have a dry out period and you're mixing in your nutrients and you're kind of pre-mixing for the life of your grow. Yeah, there's so many ways to grow. There's so many
Yeah,
aspects to it. Deep water culture is just super simple. If it's not in there, if it's not in the water, it's not in there.
yeah,
So you have to put it in there. So you have full control. You put everything that you want into the solution and you give it that solution. And because the plant has access to it all, really you'll spend more of your time focusing on environmental control than the plant.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen like on your Instagram, actually, you guys definitely check out his Instagram. I'm gonna put links to the I Can Grow Bro as well as the Hydro Bucket down below. So check them both out. But I was looking through and I saw that you had like a video on there and you were just talking about the ease of flushing or just replacing the nutrient solution if your pH or your ppm is too high or it's too low. All you got to do is switch out your res, as simple as that. So I guess there are a lot of
Yeah.
pros as well when it comes to growing in the DWC, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of ways to do it. But really what I present for new growers is kind of like a weekly recipe, which
Yeah,
allows them to you flush basically once a week or once every 10 days, and then that allows you to have a reset. Because
ooh,
the reaction is so quick with deep water culture. You can change out a plant that has problems. Let's, for example, many people will have a deficiency,
yeah,
and they'll look at the deficiency and say, okay, well, what is it? What do I do? And it takes time to solve that. With deep water culture, you don't have to. It doesn't take any time. If I ever have a deficiency, maybe something's hitting too much or not enough, I will simply just drain it, fill it with nice cool water that's pHed, of course, to 5.8, and I will just let it sit there for 24 hours.
ooh, yeah,
That dilutes everything that's in there. It makes the plant essentially just void of whatever it's after, and then I will fill it with what it needs. And
yeah,
sure enough, it has what it needs, and it can only do its best. So that's what I love about deep water cultures. That just gives you that option to always once a week, especially if you're a new grower,
yeah,
to just know you're on track all the
yeah.
time.
And you can really be in like full control. That's what I'm getting from what you're saying there. You can be in like full control of everything from the nutrients that you put in there to the pH of your water, like
Yes.
everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You have full control of the grow, and and of course, this is the other thing that comes to mind for new growers is that you don't water. Really, you have a nutrient solution, and the roots are always in the nutrient
Yeah,
solution. So you never have to interpret when is it wet enough, when is it dry enough. You just simply fill it up and then you're left with it. And so many people, they either
yeah,
overwater or underwater,
yeah.
and that's usually one of the problems, right? So it
Yes.
eliminates that big hurdle for a lot of people.
Yes, it's so true. That's a great point. I actually didn't even like think about it, but it's so like self-explanatory. You don't have to water anymore. Like I completely forgot. Like I didn't even realize that I wasn't watering anymore, but you don't water anymore. So there's no risk of underwatering or even more severely overwatering. So
Yeah.
you just got to dial in like what's going in there and you should be good.
Exactly. You're monitoring the nutrient solution, and there's just a couple parameters that you have to keep an eye on. So just like we have an environment, and we have to control our environment and give it the ideal conditions. Now we have a root environment that we have to control, and it's just controlling conditions again. So it's parts per million, pH, and temperature of the nutrient solution,
Yeah.
and we're making sure that it's oxygenated. And as long as you just make sure those four parameters are in the basics, within range, And the plant is always has what it needs, and it's always accessible. And that's why one of the reasons deep water culture just grows so fast, especially in veg, because
Yeah.
it's never waiting for a wet dry. It always has what it needs, so it can express its maximum capabilities.
Yeah, well said. And like it also, I think, grows so fast because of that roots. Those roots are just suspended in that nutrient solution. There's no soil for the roots to force its way through. It just the roots grow a lot faster, and by that theory, the plant grows a lot faster. You know,
Right.
so I mean, it seems like a win-win to me. But it just got me wondering, man. I gotta ask you this question. But like when it comes to pH, we know pH is super important, especially in DWC. Like the range ideally, I think, is 5.5 to 6.5, right?
Yeah.
But what is the pH that you would aim for? And that said, what's the pH that usually comes out of your tap? The reason I ask is because my own, I'm trying my DWC setup, and my pH out of my tap it's like 8, 9. It's pretty high.
Yeah.
So what's your pH like?
Yeah, my pH comes out of the tap a little over 7 is what my tap water is, and ideal range, your plant will function in 5.5 to 6.5. So that
Yeah.
means there's a broad range in which gives you flexibility to catch it before it goes out of range. As soon as it goes out of range, then it's not happy. But
Yeah.
that's a big range, and 5.8 is where I'd ideally put it.
Okay.
But yeah, and this is the thing. It's a good point. Is once you learn and you just keep a few notes that your tap water is 7 or 7.2, and you're mixing 100 liters, then it becomes very, very simple. That
Yeah.
adding 20 milliliters of pH down to that 100 liters of tap water puts it at 5.8. Boom. I mean, so your weekly nutrient mixes get very simple and very straightforward.
Yeah, it becomes like clockwork, right? Because you know what's
Yeah.
happening, you know what's coming out. So, okay, 200 milliliters of this mixed into that gives
Yeah.
me this, and you just keep doing that. It's like a formula for success.
Exactly.
I like that, man. Now, I've seen you mention on your reels, and your Instagram videos, and your Q&As and stuff. You speak a lot about enzymes and the importance of enzymes, especially in DWC. Can you just break down the importance of an enzyme in DWC?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I say with your nutrient solution in deep water culture, you have to choose a route. You can't simply just rely on clean and water and a lack of debris and hope that you don't have potentially root rot or things that may happen. So you either have to go with a sterile solution, which
Yeah.
is using a peroxide, and you're just going with no beneficials, just simply not exactly, but mostly in general, you're going to go with a sterile solution,
Yeah.
and that's it. And that's where you see
Okay.
really bright, beautiful roots. The
Yeah.
second option is to go with the beneficials, and 100%. The reason we're adding beneficials, number one beneficial for me is enzymes,
Yeah.
and that inhibits the root rot. And
Okay.
that's a big deal, right? That's a
Yeah.
big deal because
Huge.
I don't like to be a super clean grower. I don't, I'm not that crazy about it. I like flex. I like to just, enjoy life and not be too you know, run down on tasks, right, on the garden.
Yeah.
So if a if some debris falls into the nutrient solution, or some crumbs, or some dry stuff, or some roots break off or something, then those enzymes are going to dissolve those into a usable food source, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's why we use that.
Wow, interesting. That's an amazing point because a lot of people overlook the importance of enzymes. And I was actually reading
Yeah.
recently a Maximum Yield magazine, and there
Right.
was an article in there about the importance of enzymes. So it really got me thinking, like the importance of enzymes. And that article also circulated around DWC. So
Right.
having seen you explain about enzymes so often on your Instagram, I thought it'll probably be a great point to bring up just for those growers who don't understand the importance of enzymes.
Yeah,
Um,
and the other thing, temperature again. I like to grow with
yeah,
to be as efficient as possible. I don't
yeah,
like to use a chiller if I don't have to. I like to
yeah,
just do it for as simple as possible. And that's the one thing about adding enzymes. If you have a temperature rise, that means you're getting less oxygen. That means you're increasing your chance for root rot. If
yeah.
you have a
Wow.
root rot inhibitor, then your plants will get sad, but you're not going to lose your growth. And
Yeah.
there's a big difference there versus once you get root rot and it gets in there, now you're taking time away from, from plant production. It's not just sad, it's battling something, and you're going to have delay, and that's going to translate to a loss of yield in the end. So
Yeah.
100%, if you're going to add beneficials, enzymes are a great one.
Amazing, man. Thank you for that information, dude. Now, like, that's just amazing stuff, man. But we're gonna get into the Hydro Bucket now, guys. As you guys can see, I've actually had it up on screen right now. It's an amazing innovation, crazy. Like, there's no need for you to lift up your pot anymore, guys, to see what's going on in the roots. But before we get onto that, guys, because we may spend a little bit of time on here, I just want to go on to the Know Your Bud segment quickly. So this is pretty much just a segment where I ask everyone who comes onto the show a few questions. There's no right or wrong answer. It's all about you, what your preference is, like, what do you like, how do you do stuff. We just want to get to know you, because like I say, everyone that
Sure.
comes onto my show is my bud, and I just want to get to know my bud and what they do with their buds,
Yes.
So let's get things started. First off, a simple one. There are 3 options, the others are 2, but for this one, what's your preferred germination process? Paper towel, glass of water, or straight into the soil? Which one, and tell me why?
What I do is I'll do a glass of water for 24 hours,
Yeah.
and then I'll go into paper towel. Yeah,
Okay.
and I do that just to water for the hydration, and I also use a Germ Genie. It's a kelp product.
Nice.
That
Interesting.
it just really, since I started using it, it just dramatic results. I mean, no misses. Works really well. And then as soon as so I'll soak it for 24 hours, and then I'll put it in the paper towel until I have a taproot. And that just allows me to have a taproot, know that the seeds are viable,
Yeah.
and then I can put them where I put them. And, there's no sitting, waiting, wondering. And that's why I do that.
Awesome, man. I never heard of that Germ Genie, man. I've actually just pulled it up here.
There
Germ
you
Genie,
go.
that little, what
That's it.
exactly does it do, man? It seems amazing. Promotes germination, strengthen roots, boosts early growth.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. I've been having 100% germination rate since I've been using it, and in the past maybe have 1 out of 10 seeds that doesn't do well or whatever it is. So I've just been like all these little things that I've picked up in my garden along the way. That's just one of the things that I love for germination these days.
Awesome, man. So how do you use it? Do you just like pop a little drop onto
Tiny,
the seed?
yeah, it's really concentrated as well. So a small bottle goes a long way. And I just put a tiny bit in my water, in my pH'd water when I'm
Yeah.
soaking my seeds.
Okay.
And just so
Amazing.
not so it's brown, just so it's like tan, right? And
Yeah.
it really goes a long way. And that's it. That's enough to have the effect. And then I go clean from that point on.
Nice, man. That's crazy. I learned something new, so shout out. That's dope. Next question. Feminized or regs? Which one do you prefer?
Again, it all depends, and that's a tough one to do. I
Yeah.
love fems because I can just get a pack and just go to town, right? I don't need
Yeah.
the room. There's a lot less room required for fems, especially if they've been hunted well. You can just pop a pack and have a nice uniform crop. But regulars, we do mess with regulars as well, just
Yeah.
because I want to see those different expressions. I want to see the
Yeah.
brothers and sisters from the mother
I'm
and the
on you.
father
I got
plant.
you.
Yeah,
I like
and
that. I like that.
if you want to be serious, if you really want to be serious, then you gotta pop 20, 30, 40 seeds and
Yeah.
find that pheno if
Yeah.
you want to really be on that next level.
For sure.
So that's cool. I mean, they're both have their place.
Yeah, I like that. Well said, man. Well said. Now, next question, hydro or soil? It's probably self-explanatory by this point, but
Yeah.
I gotta ask it.
100% hydro. Yeah, that's hydro's my
I got
thing.
you. I guess you answered why before. So let's go on to the next one. Photo periods or autoflowers? What's your preference?
I like them both. Yeah, that's another one of those questions.
Yeah.
You can't deny where autos have come to.
Yeah, agreed, man.
They're amazing. Yeah, the work that some of these people have put into those strains, and they're so quick. I mean, by the time I'm taking, I usually have autos and photos growing at the same time.
Yeah, agreed.
And
Same.
yeah, exactly. And why not? I mean, why not have a couple autos in your veg tent?
Yeah.
Just growing away. So, um, Yeah, I do like them both, and by the time I actually switch my photo periods and I'm getting them on approach into flower, my autos are almost done.
Yeah,
So you can't deny stuff
perfect
like that.
timing.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it helps a lot to like tide you over between harvests and stuff. Like that's why I do it a lot too. So I guess makes a lot of sense. Next question, maybe self-explanatory again, but synthetic or organic?
Yeah, synthetic with as much organic or leaning towards organic as much as I can.
Yeah,
I would love to do full organic in a. I just realized that there's limitations with that, and that we
yeah,
haven't been able to. No one's been able to do it yet for a deep water culture environment. So, um, I had there was a good talk on. I believe it was a guest on Mr. Grow It, and he, it was from university, and he was talking about P is P, K is K, N is N.
yeah,
It doesn't matter. The plant doesn't know the difference if it's
exactly.
derived from organics or it's derived from salt. There's
Yeah,
not a better N, there's not a better P, and there's not a better K.
yeah,
So the plant doesn't know the difference. It's just that I think there's interactions there that um, that exist that I don't understand. And I'm always interested in pursuing that. But that being said, one of the beneficials that I have added in the past year was been fish shit.
okay, yeah,
And Fish Head Farms, their product essentially, it's the power of going with uh, uh, not aeroponics, but what's it called when you have fish, right?
yeah. Um,
Uh,
it's losing me on
Exactly.
that.
We know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes, we know what it is.
Uh,
And that's it. I mean, so all of a sudden you don't have to have fish recirculating through your garden. You can just have a little bit of this product and put it in there. And these are live active microbes. Again, not going sterile and introducing it into your system. And I found that the terps and
yeah.
flavors have just gone through the roof with adding that. So I feel like I'm keeping myself open to organics and always pushing towards it, but there's limitations.
Yeah, agreed fully. Is it aquaculture? That's the word. Maybe not.
Aquaponics, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, aquaponics. That's what it
Okay.
is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, Fish Head Farms is doing some awesome stuff, man. So agreed fully. I've actually seen like your pictures, man. The flowers have gotten like increased in size just by using that, man. So how do you actually incorporate that into DWC setup?
Same thing. I mix my nutrient solution. I mixed
Okay.
up today was a feed, so I
Yeah.
mix up 120 liters in a big, garbage bin that I got from the hardware store, and I just add my beneficials. Once I add my base nutrients and my silica, and I balance my pH, then I just add my beneficials at the end. I balance it one more time to make sure it's right at
Okay.
5.8, and then I put it into the hydro buckets.
Okay, awesome. I got you. I got you. Okay, now next question. Know your buds. Wet trim or dry trim? What's your preference?
Wet trim or dry trim? Um, Yeah, more of a dry trim, more of a dry trim. Yeah, we kind of do. I have a whole process in which has allowed me to get the best cured flour that I can, right? And
Yeah,
it's so dependent on the humidity that you're dealing with your local environment. Living in Alberta, Canada, it's
yeah.
very, very dry here.
Oh,
We're just off the Rocky Mountains. We're
yeah.
just east of the Rocky Mountains,
So
so
true.
in the prairies. So if you just take your butt out and you hang it, and it's just, if you don't add humidity to that room, it's just slowly going down, and it will get dry and crusty very quick. So yeah, I mean, I mostly do a dry trim.
Okay, nice. A lot of people seem to like lean that way, so I guess I sort of
Yeah,
expected that. Now bong or joint? What's your preference?
joint.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think I'm
joint.
agree with you on that one. Like I've been hitting up my bongs lately, but like after one or two, I'm like, okay, chest is heavy, time to go to the bong, the joint
Yeah,
heavy.
to be honest, my number one consumption is through water. I guess so.
Yeah,
It would be a bong, I guess, but it's not combustion. I like to vape.
vape. Okay.
Yeah, I like to vape. If you're using cannabis medicinally and you're using it regularly all day long,
Yeah,
combustion just doesn't work with lungs and throat
it doesn't.
to a certain point. Yeah, so that's it. Just doing dabs through water, and
Yeah.
then also being able to vape is a lot healthier.
Yeah, I've been
and
seeing
flavorful.
you've
I
been
mean,
doing some of that solventless extraction as well. Been getting some awesome results, man. So props to you. I
yeah.
guess that leads
Oh,
us
thank you.
nicely on to our next question. Edibles or vapes? The last one.
Vapes, yeah, vapes, yeah.
Okay, I got you. I got you. Well, that's a great segment, man. It really helped me to get to know you a little better. I'm sure the viewers get to know you a little better, because I'm sure a lot of my viewers are actually already following you on Instagram and stuff, man. So
Yeah.
now that that's over, let's get straight on into the Hydro Bucket, man. So the Hydro Bucket, guys, is an amazing innovation, created by yours truly. Like I said, it's been patented. You know, Mitchell is an awesome guy, and he came up with this. So Mitchell, just tell me, like, how did you come up with the inspiration for the Hydro Bucket? How did it all start?
Well, it was when I was down, pre-legalization, I was growing. I came into this growing technique, which was deep water culture. And
Yeah.
like everyone, and so many people still do, they don't want to spend money on anything. They like to be DIY and get $5 buckets from somewhere. So I went and I did all that and drilled the holes and put the plugs and did all that stuff. And
Yeah.
just because I am DIY, and I just found that I had this amazing growing method, which was deep water culture. I was getting great results as a new grower, right? I'd never done it before. I was getting huge yields, tomatoes,
Yeah.
cucumbers, peppers dripping off of these plants. But every time I wanted to maintain it, right, I had to lift the lid, push it over, do all these things. I had these big cages and apparatuses. And what I
Uh,
found was this just wasn't, it's finding something that's great, but just had too many limitations for me to enjoy. So
yeah.
I very quickly after that, I said, well, there has to be a better way. And so I hooked them all up into a recirculating system. So I had
Okay,
4
nice.
plants inside of a tent, external reservoir, and that's how I was rolling. But again, right away, I found there was limitations with that. I didn't want to have a chiller, but I was almost
Yeah.
forced into getting a chiller at that point because you're recirculating all that water through a hot environment,
Yeah.
and it just eventually it would just warm up, and just had its limitations. So I thought there has to be a better way. There has to be a way to do deep water culture without recirculating, and that's when I had the idea for the hydro bucket. And essentially, just by throwing on that side reservoir onto the hydro bucket, it allows you to gain all the function and features of an external reservoir
Yeah.
without the recirculating component of it, right? With an external reservoir,
True,
we got that
true.
so we can
Yeah.
check, we got it, we can, so we can add and not disturb. And that's the main thing. We don't have to disturb our plant.
Disturb. Yeah.
So,
That's amazing, man. Because I found it honestly, I've started like a DWC setup. Like I said, it's just a bucket, just like a regular bubble bucket, just one. And really getting down to look in there and not disturb the roots, it can be painful, man. So I fully get
yeah.
like why you would have come up with this, man. So how exactly was how did the process go for you? I'm sure it was like a long process. You know, it took a long time for you to get everything done, patented and stuff. But in the end, it seems like it was really worth it. So tell us a little bit about the process.
Thank you. Yeah. It took a while. We've been working on it for a few years. It
Yeah,
probably took us 2 years to get the hydro bucket where it was for sale.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it started off basics, like almost like a paper mache, except for cardboard and duct tape. That's how I built the
Amazing,
built the
man.
first
I love
the
that. You got to
first
start
prototype.
somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, and then made the outside all shiny with shiny tape, and
Yeah,
so we tested the shape. We got the shape dialed in, and then
yeah.
once we had the shape dialed in, we did a 3D print.
Awesome.
And once we functioned the 3D print, then we went and we were able to carve a mold, or do finalize the digital component of it. Then,
Yeah.
excuse me, carve a mold, and then have our mold shipped to Canada, and now we make them in Canada. So
That's amazing, man. That I'm
yeah,
I'm sure like it was a long, long road, man. Like, and just out of
yeah,
curiosity, like, what was the patent process like? Because I know back where I lived, when it came to anything that had to do with regulations, it was a long, drawn out process. You just wish you didn't
yeah.
have to do it, man. But I know everything is like usually a lot more efficient, like out in Canada and stuff. So how is that process?
The patent process was long and expensive.
Yeah,
We really had to uh, design a product that you have to design a product that is different than that is what's out there, and that has features, right, that can actually be explained in a way. So yeah, it was a long process, but it was something that we had to do that would allow us to proceed with confidence. So you don't have I'd hate to invent the teapot and not patent it, and then who's not going to just make a teapot, right?
Do it themselves, and like
exactly. So
this is actually the patent here. I just pulled it up off of your IG, man. So like I said earlier, congrats, because this is like US, Canada, like amazing stuff, man. And props to you and what you're doing over there. I always try to like commend everyone that's doing stuff like this in the community. So awesome work, man. Awesome work.
Thank you.
I got you, dude. I got you. Now, I just want to get back to the Hydro Bucket, man. It was actually a question that I had to ask was about some of the attachments and the actual one of it's almost like plant training holes that you got around that you can add like stabilizers around it. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So because I came from a DIY background, right? I really know the hurdles of having to go to the hardware store for my garden, going to the pet store for my garden, right? It was all adapted technology. Literally. And so I just wanted I want it to be simple for people. I want it to be as cheap as possible. I don't, we want people to grow in it, and I like to present what worked for me. And in the end, I mean, it's hard to compete with, just with some parts, right? I mean, for PVC, this is about $5 worth of parts that's available everywhere. And then you can put these into the Hydro Bucket, and then you have plant support. And really, that was just a big deal, because it's easy enough. It's easy enough to stick a couple of bamboo stakes in soil, right? And you need support in a big plant no matter what. But here, this allows us to build a skeletal structure. And once we have a skeletal structure, that we could even build our own, and we're hoping to offer a product here in the future where each individual Hydro Bucket has its own support structure, including its own scrog net if you want. And then you can imagine having a tent full of plants, you'd be able to pull each one. Exactly. Pull each one, deal with it, bring it outside of the tent, do any training, do any defoliation that you need to do, any super cropping, especially when it's empty, right? When there's no fluid in it, you just pick it up one-handed and you just move it outside the tent, work on it, put it back in. And at a glance, you would still have a full canopy with, scrogged, but they would be all individual. So
that's amazing, man. That's like innovation. That's taking it to the next level. That's awesome, dude. And like, just to go back to this the actual design, man. So just for those who don't understand, definitely check out his IG. But what he's trying to say is that you can take the PC pipes and basically stick them in the holes around the plant pot. That gives your plant support. So for all those times in flower when your branches are getting fat, heavy, hanging over, if you're in a DWC setup, you don't have the ease of just sticking a stake in the soil. So this takes care of that for you. That's the beauty of it, guys. It's really an amazing, subtle invention that he came up with here, man. So amazing, man. You really did seem to think of everything.
Yeah, thank you. And it was interesting. We did the hydro lid second to doing the Hydro Bucket, and it wasn't until we did the Hydro Bucket and I was looking at it and I thought, well, can we do anything else? Can we make our own lid? We had already gone through the patent process. So that led us down the path of just trying to incorporate as many features as we could if we're going to patent a product. And we're like, what can we do
that way
to make it a better product? Exactly.
To get your patent accepted, I guess.
Exactly. If you have a product factors. If you could have 7 features on a product that accomplishes 7 things that are unique from other products, you're going to get a patent.
Amazing, man. That's crazy. That's awesome. So I'm really just so intrigued by like how the Hydro Bucket works, man, because it's really an amazing setup. And like I said, you guys definitely check him out. But tell us actually how it works. Now, I know it's important to keep the roots dark, so you've been working on keeping out light leaks and stuff. So just tell us a little bit more about the Hydro Bucket in action.
Yeah, the hydro bucket, it makes deep water culture accessible. You
Yeah,
do not have to spend, you don't have to be a DIY person, and you don't have to have, a big pocketbook to get into a recirculating system. And it was just recently
for
this
sure.
week I saw someone on a forum, they were saying they went down the route of a recirculating system. It was a DIY
Nice.
job, but
Yeah,
they just weren't comfortable with pumps running in their house,
yeah,
let alone multiple pumps. Now they had a chiller on the side as well.
a
So a
lot.
hydro bucket allows you to grow deep water culture accessibly, affordably, and you don't have to invest more and more and more like other systems.
Yeah,
It allows you to exchange your nutrient solution, check your nutrient solution without ever having to lift the plant.
yeah,
And that's what we're after, right? But and not only does it allow it, it allows it in a convenient way that you can inspect your roots, you can inspect the
yeah.
inside of your plant container, you can do some root pruning if you want, you
So
can do
true.
all these things. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Didn't even
I'm
think of
just
that
getting
one.
I'm just getting into, especially with the hydropod, with the redevelopment of the the plant support carrying system.
Yeah,
With the hydropod, we're going to get into some nice root pruning and see if we can't just push things even further in the best direction. So yeah, it just gives access. It allows access without having to get into the recirculating system.
yeah, that's amazing, man. And for you guys who may think that this is not as much of a big deal as it really is, it actually is a really big deal. Because, like, have you ever like had that 5 gallon bucket? The lid just sort of clips on a little bit too much, and you're there like trying to get it off without, you know, disturbing the roots too much. Like, it can be a real pain. So this is really like game changing. A lot of growers have used this and have had great results. When I got into my DWC setup, I was just telling you off air, one of the gromies, Cav Bar Jones, he actually told me, you need to check out the Hydro Bucket, man. That's what you want to grow in. So it seems that it's honestly a very, very great invention. It doesn't take up a huge footprint, just like it's saying here, just the same size as your standard 5 gallon bucket, but just way better. It's just not a
Right.
bucket. Everything else is a bucket. This isn't. So I really do, think that it's something that a lot of growers who are in DWC can get into. But that said, I wanted to ask you, I've seen a lot of uh, posts and stuff about the RDWC, and those are, for those who don't know, it's recirculating deep water culture. So you can have the deep water culture, a single bucket, or you can have it like recirculating through an entire system. Now,
Yeah.
when it comes to mounting on to the hydro bucket or converting it from a single setup to like a multiple setup, how does one go about doing that?
Yeah, recirculating versus deep water culture. Recirculating deep water culture versus deep water culture. Yeah, the only difference is that you're recirculating. You're connecting all of your water vessels into one system, and then you're having an external reservoir that's where you do your cooling. That's where you do your
Yeah,
addition and removal of your fluids. So yeah, really the setting it up, hooking it up. We thought having a nice, for anyone who wants to recirculate, they absolutely can with hydro buckets. And we have a few growers that them hooked up and they love it.
yeah,
And again, it's all about preference and what you like to do and what your pocketbook affords and what your environment affords. So having the flat surfaces on the hydro bucket on the external reservoir just makes really nice spots where you can add, a grommet or a
yeah.
bulkhead, right?
So
And then you
true.
can connect all your return lines or
Yeah.
through that to an external reservoir. Yeah.
Again, game changing, because if anyone has ever like tried to do the DIY with a regular bucket, just the circular shape can be very difficult. You need to get the right plugs, the right grommets, you need to get everything, and sometimes you can
Yeah.
still end up with leaks. So this again changes the game and makes it a lot easier for you as the home grower. Now that said, I've seen a few pictures where you had the reflective material, like, covering the DWC buckets and the Hydro buckets. Can you explain to me why you do that? Some growers may be wondering why you do that.
Yeah, it's a good question. What we rely on, what I rely on. So here's one of the two big differences between recirculating and just a simple deep water culture
Yeah,
bucket like the hydro bucket is that you're always going to have a certain amount of volume in the recirculating system that is always warm. We're using it as a tool. We're moving
Okay.
that fluid through, and we rely on that fluid, and it's always holding heat. On a
Yeah.
deep water culture bucket by itself, we're relying on consumption of the fluid. So
Yeah.
this is key, is that it allows us to fill and watch the fluid go down. So it doesn't matter that 2 inches of fluid is getting quite warm at the end of 3 or 4 days, because we
Yeah.
just get to top it up again. So
Yeah.
we're always replacing that consumed fluid with what we need it to be. So we always have the option to correct it every 3-4 days. We make it perfect.
Yeah.
Versus a recirculating system, you have a lot of fluid there that's in there for the week, if not longer. So you're still adding and correcting, but again, you're using fluid, so you have to use a chiller regularly.
Yeah. I've noticed like a lot of growers have a recirculating theme, the importance of the water being at a cool temperature. You don't want that water to get too hot.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I look at my week in the garden. This is what I call it. Is I rely on that consumption of fluid. So when I start my week, like I did today,
yeah.
so my temperature is perfect. It's about 20 degrees, 18 degrees Celsius, or let's say somewhere between 64 and 74.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit is where my temperature is, and then my pH is 5.8, and then my parts per million, is 1150. So
Yeah.
now that it's like that for the week, within 3 to 4 days, it's going to reduce in fluid, and all those parameters are going to start to get out of range, right? The fluid's getting warmer by the day, the pH is drifting one way or the other, and it's concentrating for the most part, is getting very strong because it's using water faster than it's using that solution.
Yeah.
So it's very easy at the end of 3 days. It's okay if it's on the edge of, not out of range, but on the edge of range. And then I just simply add it up with nice cold water, pH'd to whatever it needs to be, and boom, it's just in perfect range again at the end of 3-4 days. With the back to the question, I guess, yeah. So about the insulative protection, that's why I use that insulation. Is I'm trying to maintain the cool temperature as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Because I put it in and it's going to get warm. It's going to warm up to the temperature of the environment that it's sitting in, the plant environment. And we don't want the plant environment to be the same as the root environment. We're trying to separate those two.
Yeah.
So why I wrap those in insulation is that when I put my 66, 68 degree water in there, it will maintain the temperature longer, but the key is to move your air. Don't keep your air pumps inside the tent, right?
Yeah.
If they're inside the tent, they're sucking.
Generate heat.
They generate heat, but they're also taking all that plant environment air, which is really quite hot, and putting it right into the fluid, right into the solution. So you're immediately warming it up. So I'll take my air pumps. I keep them outside of my tent, in the coldest place that I can put. I'll often in the summer, I'll find some cold air to draw from somewhere that I can. So I'm putting the coldest air possible into the environment where the air pumps are pulling. And so then, yes, I'm just trying to manage that temperature.
Man, that's an amazing explanation, man. Honestly, I did not think that was the answer. I thought I honestly knew the answer. I was like, okay, he does it. So there's more light reflectivity. It hits the bottom of the plants, no popcorn buds, all that sort of stuff. But that just took it to a whole nother level. So thank you for that, man. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of people would as well. So if you are, just smash the like button. But another question that I wanted to ask you, man, is about your current setup. So you just mentioned, I think, that you take the pump and you put it outside of your tent, right? So what's your current setup sort of looking like?
Yeah, I have tents on either side of a room. I have a portion of my garage
nice
built into a grow room. Yeah, 9 by 30 strip off the side of it, and then I have tents along the sides.
Yeah,
and
proper.
That's one of the things that I found is once I had the hydro bucket, I thought I was going to get right back into recirculating, and then instead of having a 4x4 tent and an external reservoir beside it, I just put another tent with 4 more hydro buckets, right? So
Yeah,
now
double up,
exactly.
output
So now it's
increase.
just tents all on both sides because I don't have to recirculate. I don't have external
Yeah,
reservoirs anywhere.
no
So I
need.
simply just mix up at 120 liters at a time.
Yeah,
And then, I still have a chiller. I'll chill my 120 liters. I only use my chiller maybe 2 to 3 months per year. And,
okay.
and the rest of the time I'm usually using a water heater.
Yeah,
Um, so
I got
but
you.
that's it is that's my current setup is it's all
Awesome.
deep water culture hydro buckets, no recirculating. I just mix up what I need every 3 to 4 days. I will either top up or I will mix it up for the week.
Yeah, amazing, man, amazing. Okay, that's nice. I like that you were able to double up your output, double up your setup just by eliminating the recirculating, but bringing in the hydro bucket. That's like
Yep.
again game changing. It's awesome, man. What would you say is the
Thank you.
ideal pot size, net pot size when it comes to growing in DWC? Like what if you found is your ideal net pot size?
So if I had to go back to using net pots and hydroton,
Yeah.
I found that the best one is for my results were the 6-inch net pots.
Okay, because I
And
saw you had some huge stalks, man. That's why I asked. They were massive, massive root balls. So it got me
yeah,
wondering.
yeah, when I went through the whole process of designing the hydrolid and hydropod, which doesn't use any hydroton,
Yeah,
and it was just from using different configurations, using different sizes,
I love
and
it.
for the hydroton, the best thing, the consideration with net pots is height, is
Yeah,
depth, is how deep
yeah,
they are. So the bigger the net pot, the deeper it goes, and the less fluid you have in your bucket or your hydro bucket.
yeah,
And I like to have the way I grow as much solution as possible.
yeah,
So that's why the 6-inch net pot it's not as deep and it's not as wide. So for people who are now that we have access and we can see what's in there, it's not all just a big mass that we can't see that traps contaminants and
and stuff.
moisture and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Um, so that's what I would use. But now that we've designed the hydrolid, I mean hydroton is the thing of the past. So
Yeah,
for me,
man, it's two things I want to touch on there. Like, first off, amazing hydroton being a thing of the past. I love that because that shit is expensive. Like, it can add up over time. So
yeah.
just eliminating that as anything for a grower in DWC to consider, fantastic.
Yeah.
Now the other thing I did want to mention is I've got a net bot. It's probably maybe 2-inch net pot, but it's really long. It's a lot longer than other 2 and 3-inch net pots I've seen. So does the length of the net pot make any difference as opposed to the size? So it's pretty skinny, but it's really long.
Um, you know, it would still work fine if it was skinny and long.
Yeah,
The reason that we have a gap that we have to maintain between the bottom of a net pot that contains a lot of hydroton and the top of your fluid level is that you'll just have you'll have a spot that's always moist that doesn't
yeah,
have a lot of airflow, and that's the combination that's going to
yeah,
get any kind of little bits and debris to cause competition and slime and whatever it is.
yeah.
So it can be deep, and that's fine as long as it's not trapping and there's nothing in there that's going to allow circulation. And as long as it can flow
Okay.
and you can have fluid flow and it's not a trap,
Yeah.
then it will be fine. It'll work. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. I got you. Fantastic. Now, that brings me on to my next question. It's about roots. I did mention that you grow some awesome roots. These are some roots just from the Hydro Bucket website, but a lot of the roots on your Instagram look like this dude. If I'm being completely honest, they're all monsters. So, like, what's the secret behind your amazing roots, man? They're always so healthy, vibrant, massive root balls. Like, how do you achieve that?
I have to give some credit to. I always say genetics
Okay,
is
of
a thing.
course.
You can't
Yeah,
fake good genetics. I've always used since a very long time ago. I've used microbial mass.
yeah,
They're just a product that just plants seem to really love, and helps them uptake things that they
yeah,
need. Efficiency. But really, sometimes I ask myself the same thing. What do I do? I mean, I don't do anything. It's like
Why am I so
it's
lucky
like
that I have these awesome roots?
yeah, I mean, making sure that I don't get root rot and
Yeah,
using an
for sure.
inhibitor, right? I mean, and keeping my parameters right. And this is the thing is, I really it's just all about keeping your parameters in
In
check.
check.
It's more
Yeah,
about environmental control. I'm an environmental controller. I'm a power engineer versus a
yeah,
grow master. I mean, the plants almost grow
it's true.
themselves,
Yeah.
and I just focus on the other parts of it.
Nice, nice. Now I noticed
Yeah.
that like you had a post on your IG where you were using Dynamyco, and a lot of people don't know that you actually can use Dynamyco and other forms of like mycorrhizal inoculants in DWC systems and DWC setups. So can you just
Yeah.
tell me exactly how you apply the Dynamyco to the DWC setup?
Right. So what you need is a contact point. You need a spot where the Dynomyco inoculant is just going to be able to sit on the roots, and then it'll
Yeah.
inoculate it once it's sitting there. It won't work if you're just simply in solution. So it has to be above the solution somewhere.
Okay.
So I found that's where Rockwool works really well. So
Okay.
uh,
I got
whether it's
you.
a pad or a little bowl of Rockwool that you cut out and you
Yeah.
put it in the hydroton for your roots to lay in, boom, you're going to get inoculation.
Yeah.
So
Man,
just something like that,
magic.
just being creative like that. Or if you're just using straight rock wool, then yeah,
Yeah.
you could just put your seed in one level. In the bottom level, you could take a slot and fill it with almost like a plug of Dynomyco, and then as long as your roots are growing through it, they're going to get inoculated.
Amazing, man. Like I never heard of that one before that. You just sort of dropped some crazy knowledge there. So you guys, that's a Rockwell hack for all you guys out there who don't know about it.
Yes.
I knew that you have to get the contact point, so it's important for it to make contact with the roots, but that
Yeah.
way is it's an awesome way, man. I actually saw a post on your IG and you were like sort of betting in some Rockwell because you didn't have some of the other stuff and you got it to work perfectly. So Rockwell
Right.
can come in really handy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I love Rockwool. It's a great product for starting seeds, right? It holds moisture
Yeah.
for a good amount of time and nutrients. It's very easy to cut and shape.
Yeah.
It's widely accessible. I really do like Rockwool. But the thing about all mediums, they're really none of them are necessary unless we're using it for a purpose, right?
Yeah,
So
true.
Rockwool works really well to start seeds, and
Yeah.
it works well for adding stuff like Dynomyco or mycorrhizae. Uh, but really, when testing all this, creating this gear, I was testing plants just hanging plants from a rope and not using any
Yeah.
medium whatsoever. And that's where I realized, you just need support. You just need
Yeah.
support that adds function, but you don't need anything whatsoever. You can literally just have a rope going to the ceiling, and that could be your plant support, and it just hangs in the solution. So,
Yeah, very interesting, man. That's
yeah.
awesome. And like for those who don't know, Dynomyco premium mycorrhizal inoculant, you can use our discount code ICANTHC420 and grab a little discount, but it works great. Now that actually got me wondering. I've seen some pictures as well about brown roots. Now brown roots, it may scare a lot of people. First time I saw brown roots in my TWC setup, I almost had a heart attack. But I've come to realize that it may not always be a sign of root rot, right? So what would you say to someone about those brown roots? If you're encountering brown roots, what should you do about it?
I would say you're looking at plant health number one, right? You don't get too focused on the roots. We're not growing roots so we can
Yeah.
have root salad. People are just they
I
get
love that
so
one, dude.
obsessed. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that one.
So that's it, right? It's the same thing as big fan leaves. We're not
Yeah,
growing fan leaves for cannabis salad. We're
yeah,
actually growing bud, and that's what
yeah,
we're trying to focus on. So if you're looking at the course of your grow and your seedlings mature into a veg plant, your
yeah.
veg plant matures into flower, it goes through the flowering process right into ripening, and you don't know the difference. And then by chance one day you look and you go, "Oh no, my roots don't look how I think they're supposed to." That doesn't matter. And then you harvest your flower, and if there's nothing off and there was no delays that you found that it wasn't functioning,
Yeah.
expressing as well as it could in that state of its growth, then you don't have to worry about it. But uh, uh, if you do look down there and you do see that you do have a root problem, and you have brown roots, well, there's a couple of things. Number one, color isn't the end all be all, because many nutrients are colored.
Yeah.
Many have a three part, and one's a dark purple, one's a green, one's a red.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
you mix that up, boom, you dye your roots a color that they're
Yeah.
not white. They're almost like a yellow.
That happened to me, dude, and I honestly got scared. I
Yeah,
was like, why is it browny, pinky, red now? Like, oh, I gotta flush
yeah.
all of this, throw this out, mix it back up. It's brown again.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not all about roots. The roots that we do see that are really bright online. If you use a nutrient solution that's white, you're going to have
Yeah.
white roots.
Yeah.
But anytime you add anything, including enzymes, even just basic enzymes, are going to turn them a little bit yellow.
Yeah.
You start adding, colored stuff, it's going to be, it's really, I try to not pay too much attention on that, but on root color, it's more about plant health is what I'm always looking for. I'm looking for plant health. And root rot versus color, there's a big difference. You get a slime, and you get roots that are not like a big fluff ball. They start to get stuck together, and they start to get quite dark, and they start to become a mass. And it becomes bad. So yeah.
Nice. That's honestly refreshing to hear, because like a lot of people don't know that sometimes it may just be the nutrients, me myself included. When I first started DWC, like I said, I got super scared, took the plant under the tap, washed it all off. I was like, you're gonna be okay, baby, you're gonna be okay. Please don't have newt burn. But you live and learn, right? So it's really a learning process. And again, it's all a learning process. And like I saw on your Instagram that pump choice is important. You got to learn what pump works for you. So when it comes to like choosing a pump, what have you learned in your experience you should look for when choosing a pump?
Yeah, I'd say when you're choosing an air pump, you shop with your wallet, get the maximum amount of gallons per hour that you can, because the more oxygen that we have in there, the better.
For sure.
But the second component is where are you growing? If you're growing in your garage, then it doesn't matter to have a commercial pump that's very, very loud. Doesn't bother me. But when I was growing downstairs, it was
you can
a big
hear
difference.
that.
Oh, absolutely. The 16 port commercial pump would vibrate the house, so I wouldn't have it in my house. But the four pump, exactly. The 4-pump aquarium pump that has decibels in mind for being in your living room for your fish tank, that might be a better choice if you want it in your living room beside your fish tank. So it's kind of looking at those two factors is sound and and cost.
Amazing points, man. That's amazing, because like my fish tank, I had a fish tank, and I had an air pump. It was very quiet, and then over time, as it got older, it just becomes noisier and noisier. So you can imagine how noisy like one of those industrial ones would be, like if you had your grow room next to your bedroom or your office or something like that. It can get really out of hand. Now, I noticed that you said you had a rubber impeller pump that does not require priming. Right now, that seems like it's a pretty badass pump. So can you tell me a little bit about that one?
Yeah, every garden needs a way to move solution, right? It doesn't matter if you're into soil or you're into hydro, you're still moving solution. And often you're mixing in a tote or a garbage can, and then you're pumping out of it, right? So we have to move fluid. And that's what I like. I love they're called pony pump or transfer pump. Those are the two names. And that's exactly what it is. It has a rubber impeller in it, and you can just have a hose on each side of the pump. So it doesn't matter. You just drop one end, you turn it on, and it just sucks it out, and it pumps it to the other side, and that's it. And that's what I use. That's what I use for all my water transfers. It doesn't matter. It's about your budget, really, and your configuration. If you have 20 plants, then you want a bigger pump. You're going to have a better experience with a bigger pump. But if you only have 2 plants in the corner of your house, you can go to the pet store or the hydro store and just get one of those small pumps. The hydro bucket is designed for it, so you can just drop it in, evacuate that water, and then pour it back in.
Perfect. Perfect, man. That's awesome. Now, when it comes to your cloning process, I see you also get some crazy roots. Like, I should just call you the roots guy. Everything he does, he gets crazy roots with. So your cloning process, you also got some crazy roots, man. So can you tell me a little bit about it? Because a lot of people do the old school humidity dome, stick it in rock wool, leave it for a few days. But you're using the Aero Bubble Cloner, right? One of those ones?
Yeah, I'm using a turbo cloner. That's what
Okay.
I built my own DIY one, and then eventually I was like, I'm like, oh, I'll buy a small turbo
I've got a
cloner, and they're
DIY one as
fantastic.
well, and that's what I'm using right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what's so awesome about Hydro. I mean, this Hydro allows people to just you could just build all your own
Yeah.
stuff and acquire all your own stuff for cheap and get into
Yeah.
Hydro. It's fantastic. And once you see how awesome it is, then you're like, oh, I'll spend a little bit of money, and then you see what the professional developed products are like,
Yeah.
just really
And I
enjoyable.
guess
But
you can
um,
compare at that point.
yeah. So the my cloning process, I use a turbo cloner, and simply what I do is I cut my clones, and I will do Cushman chiropractics on them. I don't know if everyone's familiar with that, but if you're not, check it out. It's really about just grabbing your stock and just turning, not squishing it,
Yeah.
but turning it so you get a snap, you get a
Yeah.
little crunch.
Yeah. I've heard about that.
And
I've seen it.
so so that's what I'll do is I'll
Yeah.
take my cuts, I'll do a little crunch on them, and then I'll soak them in water for a couple hours. And then once they're a couple hours later, I'll dip them in a rooting gel, a hormone gel. There's lots to choose from.
Yeah.
And then I will put them in the turbo cloner, and I'll use water with just a little bit of Clonex, making it very, very weak until I actually have the roots come out. And then I keep the timer on 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off. And that's it. There is a humidity dome
Yeah.
that is on it. So twice a day, I will spray the inside of the humidity dome with water, not the plants directly, and put it on. And
That's
yeah,
actually
usually
something I was
within
going to ask, man, because a lot of people say you don't really need the humidity dome if you're using like a hydrocloner, but I found that when I took the humidity dome off, everything started to wilt. It just looked like my success rate was going to take a nosedive. So I just put it back on, when I kept it on and it rooted. So is that a myth, or do you actually need it on? Do you not need it on?
Um, you know, my understanding is that once you cut a plant in the first week while it's developing roots,
Yeah.
it doesn't have the ability to, the root system is not there, so it's relying on the leaves
Yeah.
for the transportation of some form of fluid that will be in the plant. Without any water whatsoever,
Yeah.
it just can't function. So
Gotcha.
that was my understanding. I've gone with definitely putting too many clones in and keeping it too wet, and they all get
Yeah.
yellow and rotten, and that
Yeah.
becomes a problem. So I mean,
Literally
making sure that they're
rats.
spaced out. Exactly, literally rots. So having them spaced out and having enough air and not getting too crazy with it. But it's only for a week, right?
Yeah.
It's just for 7 days, and then as soon as I get little bumps and as soon as I get roots, now you have roots. So now that dome comes off, and
Yeah.
the plant starts to function like a plant because it has all its parts.
Okay, nice. So once you see those little bumps, you can take off the humidity dome most times and they will still form those roots.
Yeah, I wait until I have, like, the difference between bumps and roots is like a day, right?
Yeah.
So I wait until
Yeah,
I
it's true.
actually
It's
have
true.
have the roots, and then as soon as I have even just tiny root bumps that are identified as roots, now the plant can function. So I'll
Yeah.
take that humidity dome off, and I'll turn my fan on, my oscillating fan on, so I got some movement and all
Yeah.
that stuff.
Nice, man. That's awesome. I learned a lot today. I learned a lot today. So I think we've touched on a lot of different things, man. From DWC, the amazing Hydro Bucket. You guys definitely check out the Hydro Bucket. We'll put links down below. But it's the last bucket that you'll ever need to buy if you're growing in DWC. It's everything is set up. So definitely check it out. But I think we've gone through everything, man. We had a dope Know Your Bud segment. I got to touch on cloning with you, roots. I think we've literally gone through it all. But for those who are watching, and if they want to find you, get in touch with you, ask you some questions about the Hydro Bucket, maybe, where can they find you?
Visionaryhydro.ca is our website. That's where you
Okay.
can, like you've been showing
Yeah.
the product and ordering.
Visionary Hydro.
Uh,
That's yeah.
yeah, on IG or Facebook, we are Hydro Bucket.
Yeah.
that we come up on there. My personal account on IG is I Can Grow Bro.
I
And
love it.
but for the most part, I spend most of my time managing and posting on the Hydro Bucket. But it
Okay.
is myself and my partner Dennis that field all the questions. We both see them, so
Yeah.
that's the best place is to just contact us either via website on an inquiry or message us directly on IG. And yeah, we love speaking with growers and getting people into
Awesome.
deep water culture.
Awesome, man. Well, that's amazing, man. I've really enjoyed this chat I had with you with the Hydro Bucket, DWC, getting into the nitty gritty, man. You're super knowledgeable when it comes to like the deep water culture, growing in hydro. So thanks a lot for coming on and, you know, sharing some knowledge, dropping some insight on the Hydro Bucket, and just showing me like a little bit of the journey that you took with the Hydro Bucket, man. It's really a pleasure to see. And, you know, just thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I love growing and I love talking about growing. And I mean, what a trip, man,
Yeah,
to
I
have our
know.
own gear and bring it to market. I mean, it blows me away. So
Yeah.
I'm always just absolutely honored to have the chance to sit and talk and share our story and share our product. So thank you very much.
Most definitely, man. Well, I'm gonna chat with you again, man. Hopefully, maybe I can bring you on for a solely DWC episode because you're so versed in that. If the people want to see it, you guys drop a comment and let us know. But you know, thanks a lot for coming on, man, and we'll stay in touch.
Yes, absolutely. Sounds great.
Most definitely. I'm gonna see you. Stay safe and have a good one, brother.
All right.